House Republicans now taking new actions to hold Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg accountable for soaring violent crime in New York City.
Yeah, Republicans on the House Judiciary Committee have announced plans to visit New York City next Monday to hear testimony from what they say are victims of violent crime that have been adversely impacted by the policies of Bragg's office. This following the arraignment of former President Donald Trump on charges brought by Bragg's office. This was last week.
With us now, Andy Biggs, an Arizona Republican congressman, member of the House Judiciary Committee. Sir, welcome. Thanks so much for coming on. Talk to me about the timing of this field hearing here. What do you hope to learn from it? And how does this correspond with what we saw last week in regards to the indictment of former President Trump?
Well, the timing is we've been planning a series of field hearings in major cities around the country where we've observed high crime rates. So this just happens to be one that falls, oddly enough, coincidental, in my opinion, to the Trump indictment. So we've talked about New York, we've talked about Chicago, there's San Francisco, there's LA. There's a lot of cities that are having trouble with high crime rates because district attorneys are engaged in what we would say is maybe some lenient prosecutorial policies. So that's how that kind of worked out. We want to get there, and there are victims that we're going to bring in to have testify. We're going to review the data and the statistics as well. And I believe that the committee's invited Mr. Bragg's office, or will invite his office, to come. And if he thinks it's such a safe city, he can tell us why he thinks it's safe.
Well, he did so in a letter through a spokesperson for his office. They responded to the news of your upcoming hearing, and here it is on your screen, writing in part, quote, "Don't be fooled. The House GOP is coming to the safest big city in America for a political stunt. This hearing won't engage in actual efforts to increase public safety, such as supporting national gun legislation and shutting down the iron pipeline." It's also worth pointing out that contrary to the description of New York being the safest city, there were double-digit spikes in every major crime category other than homicide last year during Bragg's first year in office. Talk to us about that. Do you have a response from what Bragg has essentially responding to your field hearing?
Well, of course, he's going to blame it on somebody else. But here's a guy who's taken felonies and he's reduced them in about half the cases, reduced those down to misdemeanors. A recent study came out and said more than 70% of the people that he's releasing from on bail, because they're not asking for bail, they like a cashless bail type of situation there in New York. What's happening is more than 70% of them recidivate. In other words, they commit new crimes. So you start looking at that. And even when he decides to prosecute as a felony, they're only getting convictions on half of those cases. So that he's got a real weak response, and that is to blame somebody else for his own policies, which seem to be driving the crime rates in New York City. And don't forget, just 6 months ago, there was a wonderful piece out that said New York City's recovery is being inhibited by the high crime rates, or even the perception of high crime in New York City. So we think it's salient, and I think it's a good place to go to have this hearing.
All right, and we'll be watching to see what comes from it. If we could, sir, let's shift gears to the border crisis. We're starting this segment with discussion about that. And for our viewers who might not be aware, we wanted to provide this tweet. This is from Border Patrol Chief Raul Ortiz, who just periodically shares updates about what's going on at the southern border. And he shared this: within the past 72 hours, 2 agents were assaulted, 12,200 apprehensions took place, 3 firearms, 2 stolen vehicles, 5 sex offenders arrested, 5 gang members arrested, and 1 murderer arrested. A lot of significant arrests over the weekend, and he congratulates the workforce there. But what does this tell you about the state of our border and how it's being described by the DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas?
Well, first of all, Secretary Mayorkas continues to say that the border is secure, which is a big fat lie. Second thing is, and Chief Ortiz is trying to put the best light on it, but he knows what's going on. Those 12,000 apprehensions are encounters. Most of those are surrenders. And a lot of them now they're directing to ports of entry. But what he's not telling you is how many thousands of people came into the country in that same 72-hour period between the ports of entry, wearing camo, bringing drugs, bringing terrorists, bringing other criminals that were not talked. In other words, he's not telling you the numbers have got away, which is going to be somewhere probably in the neighborhood of 8 to 10,000 people in that same 72-hour period. That's what's going on the border. And, I just was there a couple weeks ago. I'll be back down this week as well. It just continues to flood, and there's no abatement to this problem. And what's happening is this administration simply tries to ignore it. Thank you guys for highlighting it, because it is an ongoing national security threat.
All right, Congressman Andy Biggs joining us live with details on that. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you for taking the time for the viewers. We appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Got it.
Got it.